Earlier today, Dr. Fauci, as well as other members of the coronavirus response team, were questioned by senators remotely, and there were some good interactions, including this one involving Senator Bernie Sanders.
Official statistic, Dr. Fauci, is that 80,000 Americans have died from the pandemic. There are some epidemiologists who suggest the number may be 50% higher than that. What do you think?
I'm not sure, Senator Sanders, if it's going to be 50% higher, but most of us feel that the number of deaths are likely higher than that number because given the situation, particularly in New York City, when they were really strapped with a very serious challenge to their healthcare system, that there may have been people who died at home who did have COVID, who were not counted as COVID because they never really got to the hospital. So in direct answer to your question, I think you are correct that the number is likely higher. I don't know exactly what percent higher, but almost certainly it's higher.
So what you saw Dr. Fauci saying there is what doctors, especially those particularly working in the New York area, have been saying from the very beginning. There is every reason to believe, statistical reasons to believe, that this is a pretty vast undercount, particularly in New York. The only question is by how much. But we know that excess deaths spiked, especially in the early weeks of the pandemic in New York City. So is it, 1,000 more? Is it 5,000 more? Maybe someday we'll find out. But it is definitely an undercount, particularly in that area.
Yeah. So right now, as things stand, America has over 1.4 million cases, more than 5 times, or the 5 largest countries combined, 5 largest in terms of the number of cases. So we're number one. We're leading the world. We have over 83,000 deaths already. Remember, Trump, of course, famously said we would have none. He said it would, quote, magically disappear, and soon we would have no cases. Instead, we have millions of cases, 83,000 dead, and as Dr. Fauci points out, likely a lot more. It's almost certainly an undercount. It can't be an overcount. The people who died were tested for coronavirus, had coronavirus, and died of coronavirus. So at a minimum, it's what this number is.
Yeah.
But a lot of people died, especially because the disease was here earlier than we realized. It actually had reached our shores in Santa Clara County, in California, and other places much earlier than originally suspected. There were already a bunch of cases that we didn't know were coronavirus cases, and many people died of that, let alone the undercount that happened in New York and New Jersey, et cetera, as Dr. Fauci and others alluded to. So, yes, I'm sure the number is higher.
Yeah.
To me, honestly, it's not that material. So let's say it was 85,000 or 93,000. Now the death toll is so high, it's become a statistic. And so it's gut-wrenching in its reality when it happens to someone you know. Unfortunately, for people who don't have, well, fortunately that they don't, for the people who don't have anyone that they know or love or care about that has had it, they don't see it at all. There are no videos coming out of the hospitals almost at all. And you're not seeing the carnage. So 83,000 or 93,000, it's just a number at this point. And people who believe in science and facts think the number is monstrously high, and we're aghast at what has happened. And for the Trump people, they don't believe in numbers. So unless it happens to them or someone they can see with their own eyes, they think, yeah, it's Trump. It's all a hoax. I mean, Trump says the number is inflated. Who the hell would inflate it, and for what reason? Doctors are not politicians. They're not going to lie and say, oh, well, that guy died of a car accident, but let's call it coronavirus.
Yeah.
That's insanity.
100%. Yeah. And in terms of the numbers, like, I feel like we should know the number because I feel like anyone who died, especially if we believe that they died and could have been saved, should be counted, that we should have an accurate reflection of what actually happened. But in terms of like the total number, it's not like if we had the accurate number, then we would be horrified. I mean, I'm looking at a tracker, and so far today, there's 1,500 reported deaths. So the number of people who will die of coronavirus while we're recording this hour of the show would be, if it happened at one time from any other cause, would have been a week's worth of news coverage. If that many people had died in one school shooting or whatever, it would have been the biggest political event, 1 hour of the coronavirus. And when you pile those hours on top of each other, it just becomes impossible to actually understand. You can see the number, you can think about it a little bit, but you can't care 80,000 times as much about this number as about one person dying, which is what seems like should be merited. But we do have to talk about this because on the other side, I mean, we're doing a story about this. You know, Tucker Carlson and Laura Ingraham, their whole show will be spreading misinformation and conspiracy theories about this. We could show you any number of different clips. Here's a little bit of Britt Hume and Tucker Carlson talking about this area.
The New York Times and Washington Post, I thought as if on cue, published stories about, well, it looks like we were obviously underestimating the fatalities from this because, you know, before we really knew more about it, a lot of people died and undoubtedly they had it. So we missed those and they should be in the coronavirus death count and so on. And if everybody's being automatically classified, if they're found to have COVID-19 as a COVID-19 death, we're going to get a very large number of deaths that way. And we're probably not going to have an accurate count of what the real death total is.
And there may be reasons that people seek an inaccurate death count, but we can address that later. I really appreciate your clarity.
I just don't think
I'm not accusing anybody.
Dr. Birx and Fauci are doing that, but I think they were working on what they had.
I'm not accusing them of that at all.
Right.
Yeah, no, I'm not accusing individual people because then I would have to argue for why those individual people would do that. I'm making blanket statements without evidence about an anonymous group of people so that it's not verifiable because that's way easier. It's way easier to pull one over on my audience if I'm speaking vaguely and asserting that people are doing crazy things without being able to explain exactly why that would be.
Well, why would any doctor risk their careers to say that someone who died of cancer actually died of coronavirus? What an insane thing to do. But maybe because the right wing is insane, they assume everyone else is insane. They're like, well, I'd fake everything. I'd lie about everything. So I assume doctors and scientists are also faking and lying about everything. That's entirely possible.
I think it's simpler. I think it's just motivated reasoning. They cannot have people out there acknowledging the horror of what has happened. And so whether they're able to come up with a good excuse for why we shouldn't consider it to be 80,000 people or not, they just have to say it's too high. And the thing is, those ridiculous arguments, so vague, there's nothing there. I mean, we can see the number of excess deaths spiking during the early weeks of the lockdown in New York City. I would love to hear an alternative explanation as to why so many people just started spontaneously popping up dead at their homes while a pandemic was going on. But that wasn't related to the pandemic. Feel free to do that if you want to, Tucker Carlson. No, but it doesn't matter because their audience totally buys it. If you look on Twitter, if you see the comments, they just accept, no, the number is far, far lower than what we're seeing. I don't know exactly how much lower, but enough that I don't have to care about it. Enough that I don't have to think critically about Donald Trump, who obviously didn't care about this and bungled it from the very beginning.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.